What's going on, everybody? Today I've got a tutorial for you here. You may not notice it right off the bat, but we'll be done with the PS2 FAT console. You can see here we've got the actual disk drive from a PS2 FAT. This is actually the one I'll be working with today is from a 5001 model. Obviously, the biggest indicator for that is the power and eject buttons are physically attached to the disk drive on this version instead of in the case like the earlier versions. So your disk drive may look different than this one, but all the concepts I'm going to show you apply no matter what disk drive you have. It may just look a little different, or maybe it's a little bit different size here or there, but it's all the same thing. What we're dealing with is we're dealing with the disk tray not working correctly. What you might see is, you hit the open button and the disk tray, you might be able to hear it do something, but it won't come out. Another really common one is it's just really slow, and so what'll happen is it ejects kind of slow, and then right about the time it gets to the end of the cycle to be fully open, it kind of just stops, and then it sucks it back in, giving you a whopping 1.3 microseconds to put the disk in there before it closes up. That also applies here, and that's also in the same realm of the stuff we're going to cover. Anything that's going to prevent the disk drive and the disk tray from functioning. We're not dealing with any reading issues or disk read issues today. The big reason why I want to make this is because in the last few years I've noticed some we're getting more failure rates with these now. For other parts, for a long time it was just simply using some lubricant, using some a new belt, a replacement belt would fix most of the time. But now we're starting to see other failures in here too, and so this video is going to cover all the major aspects of that, and that way you can kind of diagnose the issue. So this isn't going to be like a quick 3 steps to get your console working again type of video, because what happens is it only applies to 10% of the people with the problem. So we're going to cover all the issues so you can go through everything and decide if you can fix it, if you want to fix it, or how to fix it. So anyways, what we're going to do is obviously I've got the disk drive here by itself. I'm not going to fully disassemble the console. We're just going to start first by getting the guts of this opened up. You will need a rather small, some people call them jewelry or watch sized screwdriver bits, because these are really small screws. So we're going to take these out. Some models you'll see there's 4 screws on the top. Some it's 2 on the top, 2 kind of down on the sides. There's this one on the 5000 where it's 2 on the front, and then you got clips. You got one where there's a clip up in the front. Again, it's going to be different for you depending on your drive, but you're going to be taking all these screws out. And then if you do have one of the models that have these little clips, what it is, you'll see there's a little slot right here. So what you do is you actually stick a flathead screwdriver down in it, push it out a little bit, and then pull up. Then you do that with this side as well, and then it will pop that top right off. And then make sure we've got our screws in a safe spot so you don't lose them. With other disk drive versions, what you're going to have is the disk tray here. Let me grab you an example. Unlike the 5000 model here, most of the other versions have a disk tray like this, and you've got a little sliding piece here. It actually rides on a rail underneath it. So it sits like this in the disk drive, where it's got this little guy right here. There's going to be 2 screws that you take out here, and then what you do is you kind of, once the screws are out, you pull up on that side, and then you can just pull it out. On this one, it doesn't have that. So what we do is we flip it over, and there's a white piece right here. And you can see there's some little holes in the very edge of it. Just take that and pull it all the way to the side like that. And as you saw, the disk tray came out on its own, because it does kind of lock it into place a little bit. That way this will pop out. And then after that, we can essentially just pull it all the way out. Now, the next thing we need to do is we need to actually get, excuse me, we need to get inside the mechanism here. Now, just so you know, I've already messed with this one a little bit, so yeah. There's some stuff in there, some grease and stuff like that already. Most of them, there will be one single screw right here. But then like with the 5000, that screw is actually reversed. It's on the top side. So we're going to take that screw out here. And then this pulls out differently, but it kind of is wedged in there usually with like these little prong pieces that kind of go inward. So what you're going to do is you kind of pull it back a little bit, bend it upwards, and then pull it out like that. Okay? And it works a little bit different with each version again, but same concept. Okay, so now as you can see, we've got the eject system here. Now, what we're going to be doing, there's two major things, right? Because back in the, I want to say back in the day, but, a long time ago, if you had a console that wouldn't eject, you either had physical damage to the disc tray, like the tray with the sliding thing on it we just showed you. Those versions, that tends to break a lot really easy, or people tend to strip the screws out, and we will talk about that too in a second. So either had physical damage, or you just had a belt, which is right here, that's in really bad shape. And again, this could look different on your version, but it's all the same concept. It's just different sizes, different looks. Some of the other versions, some of the actual eject motor have a couple more screws that you're going to have to take out. It just depends. Most of them look really similar to this, though. So the first thing we're going to start with is we're going to try to see if the belt and some lubrication will help. With this kind of thing, there is, with a lot of other disk drives, you can go to like a Walmart or a Target and go to the beauty supply, the hair supply section, and you go to where they have like hair bows and hair accessory type of things. What you'll do is you can find a little small package of little rubber bands. And those rubber bands are perfect usually for replacement belts for this. It's wild, but yeah, in fact, in many times for many consoles, they're actually even better. So you do have that option. However, with the PS2 is a little bit different. Okay, so those replacement belts will still work, but sometimes if you have an eject motor that's not working, it's working, but it's not working the best, those replacement belts could actually make it worse. And that's the big difference with this compared to like the Xbox 360. Those you can just replace it with one of those and you're good to go like it was brand new. With this one, it can be a little tricky, and that's kind of the difference here and what we're really going to dig into. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to try to replace your belt. So all we're doing is we're pulling the belt off and then the gear it was attached to. All right, and kind of you can either take a photo of this too before you disassemble it, just so you know exactly how the gears are positioned and stuff. So if you kind of are afraid you're going to get it mixed up, take you a close-up photo, and then that way when you go back to reassemble it, you'll know exactly how things are supposed to go. So we're going to pull that gear out. This is a gear right here we're going to pull out as well. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to do a lubrication type of thing. Now, a lot of people use different things. I'm really impartial to white lithium grease. It doesn't really matter what brand. I've had this forever too, so I don't even know if that brand exists. But white lithium grease is a great lubrication. But just have with a little caveat here, that lithium grease only does so much. In fact, it actually does really minimal amount of good for the console. But because of how finicky these eject motors are getting right now, that lithium grease can be the difference in whether this repair works or doesn't work. There's even some times where you can put a replacement of one of these in here, but it still is working a little slow and stuff, and that lithium grease is just enough to get it moving the way it should be. So what we're going to do is we're going to grease all these gears up. Now, what I do is I only grease one of the gears. So this is the biggest gear that was in there that you pulled out. It's actually got 3 systems on it. If you notice, you got one on top, one around the outside, and then flip it over, and you got another one in the middle here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that lithium grease, and we're just going to start putting a coat. Now, on the tallest, biggest one, there's one side that's a little bit bigger than the other. That one, make sure to put the lithium grease as close to the edge, to the top as you can, because most of that doesn't hit. This is the part that hits the disc tray itself, and it only hits the very top here. So you're just going to put a little bit in there as you go. You're going to kind of turn it. And you remember, you want to smush it into the actual gears a little bit. Don't just like lather a little bit on top of it. Make sure it's going down into each slot there. That'll help make sure it spreads easier and faster. Okay, so we're doing that for the top one, the middle one. Again, I'm just kind of putting a little bit out and then kind of smearing it around. If there's any that gets to the top or bottom, you can kind of just wipe it off a little bit so it doesn't make too much of a mess. But again, we're just putting a little bit and just smearing it around. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing on this last one on the bottom. Just going to put some in there. Okay. Now, you do want to clean this up because this stuff can get everywhere, and if it gets to be too much, you could accidentally get some on something that you don't want on there. So, like, with this one, you can see there's, like, gunk and stuff like that. You can just, like, just make sure you don't wipe too much off of that middle gear. You're just wanting to get the stuff off here, the stuff off the edge on the top. Just clean it up a little bit. The less mess, the better. And then what we're going to do, we're going to insert it again. Again, the smallest outside one is the one that goes down. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to start working it a little bit. At least that's what I call it. So we're going to start pulling this white mechanism so that it's turning this gear. And then you're going to pull it back, turn the gear manually a little ways, and do that again a couple times. Pull the gear back a little bit. Do it a few more times. Pull it back again a few more times. What we're doing is we're spreading the stuff around before we reassemble it on all of it. Make sure it's nice and spread out. Plus, as you know, we only did this gear. We didn't do anything on this part, so that's lubricating this part now for us. All right, so then we're going to take this other gear. This is the one that has, and this one you're going to want to be careful because you don't want any grease to touch that belt. If the grease gets on that belt, even just a tiny bit, it can almost ruin it. Not ruin it like damage it, but you'll have to start over or use a new belt because that grease will get up in this slot that's right here on the edge. And when that grease gets in there, that belt will just, now that belt is lubricated. Now it'll just spin around sometimes. So, for this next part, make sure everything is cleaned off really good. There's no grease on it. When you're handling the belt itself, wash your hands to get all the grease off of it. So we're going to stick that gear in there, and then we're going to do the same thing we did with that other one. We're just going to turn it so that everything's turning, and then we'll turn it back the other way. We're just getting that grease spread out a little bit. It's better to do it and have it worked in there a little bit before you assemble it. And then again, because this already had grease, I've made a bit of a mess, so I'm going to use a Q-tip. Just clean up some of the stuff that's obviously extra. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect either. You just want to get a little bit of the extra. Plus, I can be a little overzealous with this stuff, putting the grease on, so I end up with a little extra anyways. Because you might even be able to see it right here on the edge. There's a little bit of it building up on the edge here. And you want to, some of that's fine, but too much of it, it can work its way up into the drive where you don't want it. Okay, so now we've got that. We're going to take one of our replacement belts. And again, this one's already messed up, so I didn't wash my hands or anything like I just told you to. I don't need to because this one's actually totally shot. In fact, there's a couple of broken pieces that prevent it from working. So it doesn't matter if it's actually dry. So we're just stretching this out. You want to be careful here because it can look like it's attached, right? But then it turns out that the belt actually slipped under this right here. so it's not actually in the slot. So you want to turn this gear over here and make sure it's turning all the way over to the spindle here on the eject motor. If that's spinning when you're only trying to spin this, then you're good to go. Okay. Now all we're going to do is we're going to reassemble it. Now, this is just the first step, right? Because this can help a good amount of people, just putting the new belt and that. But again, we're going to get into some of the more common failures that are happening nowadays in just a sec. But I just want to show you. So I'm not going to reassemble everything, but you're putting it back together. Don't forget to put this top back on it, because without that, the gears just fall right out. And put your screw in right here or underneath, whichever side you have. Get your disc tray in properly. Now, the main thing I really want to show you about reassembly, there's a reason for that, is no matter which one you have, that white thing that we were playing with earlier that goes across, okay, there's a little peg right here. That peg has to properly slip into a slot that's right here on the underneath. Like I said, each version, I feel like a broken record saying that, but each version, the disc tray can look a tiny bit different the way it works, but there's still going to be a slot, and it still has to fit in there. So what you got to do, you got to get the disc tray started, and then you slide the white part over until it lines up with that hole there, and it's properly going in. That way, it's actually lined up. Now, if you do have a 5001, just be careful, because until that top goes back on, this can pop out some, and that white thing that goes in the slot that we just did can come out. So make sure you immediately put the top back on before you do anything else. Now, what you want to do is you put your top back on, put the screws back in, and what we're going to do is you're going to reinstall this, and then you're going to test it out. Now, the first couple times you do it, when you're first testing this thing out, work it a bunch before you really give it a good test to figure out if that's fixed your problem. Because even though we worked the gears a little bit and worked the grease in, it still doesn't fully work it around everywhere. Plus, there's like the bottom of the disc tray. We did the gears, but the bottom of the disc tray right here, where it connects, it doesn't have any grease in it now. So what you want to do is those about 10 or 20 times at least, open and close it and open and close it. One time let it open as far as it'll go, then close it. One time open it and then close it before it goes all the way out. Just mix it up, have it moving, go all the way out, then all the way back in, then just add a little bit and then back in. Just a random assortment of that, because you're just working the grease in there and all the nooks and crannies. Once you've done that a good 15, 20 times, then you want to shut the console off, give it a second, shut it back on. Now you'll do the actual test. See if it'll open on its own. If it didn't open on its own before, does it open now? Is it ejecting kind of slow? And wait and notice, does it open all the way and then stay open, or does it open and then go back in a couple seconds later? Another indicator, too, when that's about to happen is it'll look like it's fully, come out. But you'll notice the blue light right here is still blinking, and that's because the eject cycle hasn't fully done it yet. Okay, and if you see that, that means that this wasn't enough to fix your problem. And unfortunately, that's just about the only way to tell, because you can't tell, and I'm just going to take all this back out real quick. You can't tell if the eject motor is going to be bad. Unless you see something where it's like physically damaged or something, you're not going to be able to know if it is just the belt with some lubrication will fix it, or if you need to replace that itself. And that's the next part. If it, the belt should have at least helped it open. But a lot of times what you'll see is even after that, it's still real slow, and then it just sucks back in and doesn't ever stay out. That might be better if it was totally stuck before. You might think, well, that's fine, At least it opens, I can still put a disc in there. That's not right, because if it's that weak that it sucks back in, it's not going to be that long a time before it gets stuck again and either won't come out, or it just comes out like a little bit, or whatever the case might be. So if it doesn't complete the open cycle and then complete the close cycle on its own, then your eject motor itself has gotten too weak, and you might as well go ahead and replace it. Now the only problem is that, like for me myself, typically anybody that watches my videos, they know that I put links in the description for parts and stuff like that. And this is where the difficult part is, because even myself, I don't ever sell any of these, right? Because I never have any extras of these. I never have leftovers. There's enough of these that fail and enough of them that need it, where I need to scalp one from one drive, that I rarely have more than a couple extras of these at the time. So if you can find one, definitely get one. But your issue may be that you're not going to be able to find just the eject motor. And that's definitely an issue in this day and age. All I can really say is just keep your eye out for it. If you can get it to open and stuff like that, I mean, I guess you could do that, but just remember that you're on, your days are numbered, so they used to say. You're not going to be able to have it like that very long before it gets stuck again. Eventually, that would have to be replaced. Now, of course, if you can't find anything like that, you could try to maybe go on eBay. Some people will sell drives that are broken. Maybe if you can find a disk drive that's broken, maybe it doesn't read games, the laser's dead, but maybe it still has a good eject motor. Just make sure you ask, if you find a seller like on eBay or something, hey, is it just the laser, or does the eject system work the way it's supposed to? And then you can scalp one for that. But you may have to pay $25 for even a broken drive. Maybe you'll find a good deal, maybe you won't. So obviously at that point, your only option, if you can't wait, or if you couldn't find anything for a while, your last option, of course, to replace the whole drive. But what I would say is, if your drive reads games but just will not eject right, and you replace it with a whole drive, don't throw your old drive away. Because let's say that drive, the new drive you get, that eject motor starts messing up on you in a year or 6 months or something. Or maybe it has an issue where it stops reading games. You've got some backup parts here. So that's another little tip that I'll give you on that. Otherwise, that's pretty much all I can really show you. There was one little thing, I guess. There are disk drives. So let me find I don't have it sitting here. This is kind of another little Hail Mary. This is another disk drive for the PS2 Fat. As you can see on this one, it's different. This is one of the very, very first ones ever put in the console. This was strictly in 3001 models, and only certain 3001 models have this. But obviously the biggest difference is this one has the PCB control board for the disk drive attached in the disk drive, which is typically what you see in most disk drives. But this one, and there's one other one that's just like this one, are the only ones that have it. There is a small chance that you have some bad components on this PCB. So as another last-ditch effort, if you can find a replacement PCB for your board, for your disk drive, you can try replacing that. Again, though, just take it with a grain of salt, because it's a total toss-up. You're kind of just throwing stuff at the wall and hoping something sticks at this point. But it is an option. Not only that, but the trying to find a PCB out there, somebody selling it, is damn near impossible. People just don't do that. So it's going to be unlikely. But if you do have one of the disk drive versions that have the internal PCB, it is at least one other option you can look at. Because at the end of the day, if you can't find stuff, it might be worth it to you if you can find one to try to get it running again. So I just wanted to throw that out there as well. And then my last little bit, I know I've talked a lot and people complain about me talking in my videos, but it's a lot to explain here. While getting parts, just keep in mind that these eject motors and stuff, it's not a one size fits all. It's not a just hurry up and go on Amazon or eBay or something and search for eject motor and just get the first thing. As an example, this is one of the eject motors that's from one of the earlier disk drives, like the one I just showed you. As you can see, this one doesn't have a PCB on it. It's just the motor with the wire with pinkish reddish connector on it. There are many different styles of these, so you have to make sure you get the proper one. And your other issue is that multiple 3000 model disk drives and multiple all the 5000 model drives, meaning 5001, 35,001, 39,001. Their eject motors look really similar, but actually the 5000 ones have a little bit different cut on the PCB, and so they can't change out. So if you are trying to find a replacement, specifically make sure it's not from a 5000 model if you have this type of eject motor. And yeah. So otherwise, if you need and you get to the point where you want to replace your disk drive, I know it kind of feels like it sucks, especially if it reads games, but the eject is causing too many problems. Check the description once again. I'm going to put a link where you can get some replacement disk drives. Luckily, these aren't as expensive as, say, the original Xbox. Those can get up to $100 now, but these usually stay right around anywhere from $50 to $60. There's a few you can probably get for $40, $45 sometimes. So they're not crazy expensive and still way cheaper than buying $80 to $100 for a whole nother console. So it could be worth it to look in the description and check out that link, and you can definitely get yourself a replacement. Okay, and that's all I've got for this one, guys. So I hope this helped you. I hope the tricks helped you to get you running again. And until next time.